Hey everyone, it's Andrew Nagel of Alkanine Designs, and we're back with part 10 of the start to finish complex pendant design. This is where I'm going to show you how we do the final polish and then the ultimate bezel setting of this pendant into the design. Next week I'm also going to do a specific bezel set example for you, but to start this off, we've pulled our backplate out of the pickle pot. I've already gone after it a little bit with this wet dry sandpaper. We're going to be starting with a 600 grit and then progressing up to a 2000 and 3000 grit. I'll leave a link in the description for this. Basically what you're going to do is you're just going to go over this whole back plate with every single grit of this sandpaper, starting with the roughest up to the highest grit to start with the base polish and to remove all of the scratches and other tool marks and stuff like that. This will also help remove any other nasty bits that didn't get removed while it was in the pickle pot. So take it all over on the sides, on the middle part, on the inner part, the parts that you can reach. If you can't reach all of the inner parts, you can finish polishing the inside with your like radial bristle discs that we use for the flex shaft. I highly suggest that you watch my polishing tutorials as well, because that'll go more in depth of this process. I believe this is the only tutorial where I talk about the sandpaper, but yes, you have to go through this whole process, starting with the 400 or 600 grit going up to the 3000. This is right after the 3000 grit sandpaper, so I've done my whole base polish on it. I'm now stamping this with my maker's mark and then also the sterling silver stamp, so the .925 mark, and what I'm doing is holding this directly on top of where I want to make the stamp, and I'm using slight taps while moving the piece in a forward and backward and a side-to-side motion, kind of like a joystick. And then now I'm doing the 925 stamp, and I'm doing kind of a rolling motion with this one to roll the 925 over the sheet as I'm making little tiny hammers onto the end of the stamp. When you get these, you always think it's going to be just one quick stamp, one quick hit to do it, but no, it's better if you use little hits to make the marking with the metal stamp. So going over it with the 3000 grit on the back plate, and now to polish the pendant as well. Again, I suggest you watch my polishing tutorials because those will go more in depth than this tutorial. But I'm starting with my rough, I believe this is the 400 grit, and then I'm going to progress through these silicone wheels, same progression as like the sandpaper. You're starting with a rougher grit, and then you're progressing up to the finer grits to get the higher grade of the polish. And so I'm also going to finish this all off with my radial bristle discs. This is the 800 grit, I think, or the 80 grit is the yellow one's the 80 grit. And so again, starting with a low grit, moving up to a higher grit to remove the layers of metal and to create a polish across the entire surface. So I'm going to be doing this with the pendant as well. I'm going to be removing all of my tool marks and then polishing everything up using a progression of bristle discs and yeah, just bringing out the shine on this piece before we ultimately set it into the back plate. So once it fits into your back plate, you're ready to take your bezel pusher and you're ready to push your bezel down to form this around your pendant. You want to be careful as you're going around corners, and you don't want to fold the metal over itself. So you're going to have to be mindful about how the bezel pusher pushes the bezel onto the pendant. Again, next week I'm going to do a whole bezel tutorial for you all, and that'll give you a better look at the process and how you should think about where you're pushing down the bezel over the pendant. And so we're going to finish this off with a polish over the bezel, because those bezel tools do leave some marks on the tip of the bezel. And so you're going to just, I'm using the fine silicone wheel, and then I'm going to progress up from the fine to the ultra fine and then go over it with you know, the 1 micron bristle disc as well to finish up the polish here. And so what you could do from this point after you've polished it is you could oxidize it as well, or leave it with this high polish finish. I'm not exactly sure I'm fully happy with this piece. I do like the design and the detailing that we did. there's just a lot going on, and it ended up being a huge piece of bezel as well. If you're backplating pieces, I suggest they're honestly smaller than this, just because once you start working with a large piece of sheet, it's hard to get the bezel to be nice generally. I mean, this ended up being like 3.5 inches tall, and yeah, I'm just not 100% sure I enjoy it, but yeah, that's the process for polishing and then bezel setting the pendant. Again, next week I'm going to do a specific bezel set pendant design where I'll show you how we bezel set a stone in some sheet silver, so that way you can think about the process of pushing the metal over the pendant a little bit more. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a great weekend.